one of the things that I live by is, don't judge somebody because they sin different than I do.
But you talked about your faith. Switch gears a little bit. You talked about your faith, and that was another thing. I've always been a man of God. I've always been a person that believed in Jesus Christ. Obviously, I could definitely have been a better follower and stuff like that. Your faith was number one, and you were not shy about that at all. You let that known, and whoever was around you talked about that. I felt like you were always very fair about the way that you talked about God and talked about your journey and the way that you believe. I don't want to ask such a simple question of how important has faith been in your business, but when you face trials and tribulations and you face difficulties, you know what I mean? Is that where you ran to get through those times? I know it's easy to say yes, but like for somebody who might be on the edge or kind of teetering with faith, or somebody who's like, they've been told to pray all their life, but they never heard God talk to them, so to speak, or something like that. How could you convey that message to them? Because I know, we've talked, but I want our listeners to know, how important has faith been with being able to run a business for 50 years and being able to, raise build a family, raise two wonderful daughters, and deal with all the things that you've dealt with, and have hundreds of people, if not thousands, come through your business and so forth. What has faith been, and how much of a role? And give me a rundown on that.
Probably the most important facet. God first has always been. When there's difficulty that I've had to face or things that I don't know what to do, that's where I turn first, because he's an all-knowing, all-seeing God and knows everything, whether I do or not. I'm very infantile when it comes to that kind of stuff because, he's the God of creation. One of the things that I live by is, don't judge somebody because they sin different than I do.
I like that.
Church is a hospital, just like anything else. It's there for sick people. But people get saved outside of church. We all have sinned, just like the Bible says. But the fact is that nobody's without sin. To judge someone else because they do something different than I do is ludicrous. Because who am I? That I could be the thief on the cross, or I could be the other guy on the other side of the cross. The fact is I don't want to be that guy.